What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is Fantasy NBA 101. He is Bill. I am DWill. And for the first time in the history of the show, we get the introduction down without a flop in there. I'm so excited. It's going to be a good show. Will, I didn't do this last time you were on me, so I'm going to throw it to you first before I tell them what we're talking about. How's it going, man?
I'm doing great, David. Glad to be back with you again. Fantasy NBA 101. So much fun. Can't wait to give the people what they want.
So we are talking about dominating. We're focusing, this series is focusing right now on dominating your head-to-head leagues. We talked about your draft preparation. We talked about draft strategy. We talked about your list. Today we're going to talk about navigating the waiver wire. What do you do? How do you go about it? When should you spend your top waiver priority on a guy? And so, Will, I'm going to let you lead with this, man. When you are going throughout a season and you're watching, because every single year there's a guy that comes off of waivers that nobody was really expecting to be as good as he is. It could be a player that's been in the league for a few years that gets into a position where he's getting an opportunity. It could be a rookie. I don't know. Scotty Barnes done very well last year, but I don't think that he was one of the top rated rookies necessarily. It was a lot of people like to go with, the top 2 or 3 picks thinking that they're going to do it. And then Scotty Barnes is one that kind of surprised some folks last year. So we're not talking names in general, but how do you navigate your waiver wire whenever you're going to add something to your team?
Right. Great question. First of all, this is Fantasy NBA 101. So let me break down the waiver wires for you. There are 2 different types. You could either have FAB, where you're spending money to claim a player, or priority, and that's just rankings of teams. If you're 5th, you have the 5th best option of getting the player you want. So it goes 2 different ways like that. And sometimes players are worth losing your priority or worth spending a lot of FAB on, and sometimes they're not. You have to evaluate that as well. But the main things I go on are you have to check your team, make sure your team is in good standing. Do not panic if someone does not perform well the first few days, first week. And but if you have a guy that is interchangeable, normally like your last 1 or 2 spots on your roster, and you say, this matchup is getting kind of close in the category. I need a couple more blocks. It's a guy out there that's a great blocker. I can drop this point guard that I don't need and pick up this guy for blocks. So you prioritize your categories mainly, and then secondarily, best overall players, because there are times when you can find a guy that's just so good, they're going to stick on your roster all year. So those are the 2 ways I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. You and I kind of approach it in the same manner, right? Like, that somebody's going to be out there. And what happens a lot of times, you see guys pull the trigger super early. You see one guy comes out and nobody thought he was going to play well. He has a 20-point game immediately. And then it's like a feeding frenzy over that guy. So I won't discourage you from picking up guys in the first week if you're really trying to win, but I also won't necessarily encourage it. The early in the season, you can't really get a full feel for how guys are going to be, what they're going to do on a day-to-day basis. You let them get a few games under their belt, and then you're going to see kind of those rotations. I think a great example this year, Cam Reddish in game 1 against the Grizzlies put up 22 points. He knocked down a few threes. He had some defensive stats. It was a good matchup for him. The Grizzlies were ravaged at the wing. They didn't have anybody to match up to defend him very well. And so he was able to go to town and do what he wanted to do. If you rushed out to pick him up and you drop somebody that could benefit your team, well, then you got disappointed. And so it's not necessarily about the name of the guy that you're going to get or when you go to get him. It's how you approach it. Give it a little bit of time. Typically when I draft a team, unless something happens, if it's an injury, if I draft a guy and he has a big injury early on and he's not somebody that's going to be on my team throughout the season, or he's a guy that I can drop and I'm confident that I can get him back, then I'll go ahead and move away from him. But in the first couple weeks of the season, for me at least, I really try to just kind of watch. I look at the box scores, I look at playing time. That's a huge indicator of what you should do. If you go, say Cam Reddish puts up that 20-point game, and I'm going to keep using his name, but again, I don't want you guys to necessarily focus on the name. He puts up the 20-point game and he plays 20 something minutes in game one of the season. But then 4 games in a row after that, he's playing 11 minutes, 12 minutes, 14 minutes. And he has that one game where he got extended minutes, but you have another guy that's been consistently putting up 14 points and he's getting 25 minutes a night. This guy that's constantly putting up the 14 points, getting more opportunity is probably going to be your best bet. So big games are something, maybe if you've got that guy where you can just kind of float them. If you're in a games cap situation, which typically in head to head, there's not a games cap situation. So you're not worried about that too much. But in a lot of head to head leagues, they have a limited number of moves. Some leagues have it, you can only make so many moves for the year, and some base it off of a week to week basis. So be selective, be okay with missing out on a guy that's really, really hyped up early. You don't have to go out and blow your free agent budget or blow your waiver priority on a guy just because he had one good game.
Yeah, and I also have to say you need to factor in injuries. Like if a guy is available because he had a dominating performance, is that because he's normally a bench player and the starter above him got injured? So you have to factor in, yeah, he's good right now, but when that injured replacement comes back, he's going to go back to a bench role. And a lot of times you can find gold there, but it's going to be temporary. So you need to keep an eye out on how long the guy's going to be out. Was this a blip on the radar or not? And also there are players out there that have a pattern of being dominant for a couple games every season, and then they fade into the background every season. So you don't want really to go too crazy on a guy that's, come and go because of opportunity. It happens every year. The guy is just an average talent, and then you just say, whoa, he just blew up, but they kind of do that every year. So those are things to look out for. And, you may not know that going into your first or second year in fantasy, but that's what Google's for. If you have never heard, who's this guy? Let me do a little research on this guy before you just blow all your fab on him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can get value. What Will was saying, paying attention to injuries, it's very important because you can get a guy, let's say the backup point guard for a team, right? The primary point guard goes down, and that player X is a direct backup for the primary point guard. Well, then you can go out and pick him up. If you have a streamer position, if you have a guy on your roster that you drafted at the end of the draft hoping he would hit, and you're okay dropping him, go out and drop him and pick that backup up and get a couple games out of him and get good value, because sometimes you can get, top 40, top 50 value out of these guys when the primary player is not there, because they're playing, they get bumped up from 18 minutes a game to 30 minutes a game. And so those numbers climb. Managing your free agent budget is important, because when that big player comes out there, and I was talking to Will a little bit before we started recording, and I'm in one league that every single year, like clockwork, by the third week of the season, somebody drops a perennial top 50 or top 75 player because they're struggling. Don't know why they do it. We talk about it all the time. And there's one guy that does it a ton, but there's a few of them that do it. We talk about it, they're like, oh yeah, I gotta stop doing that, man. I spoon fed you to him, but they still do it. And so if you rush into it early in the season and you're like, oh, I really want this dude that just went 20-10, but that's the only time he's done it, and you blow all of your free agent budget, when a perennial guy that is a top 50 or 75 player goes out on your free agent wire, you're not going to have the money to go out and get him. Or if you had a good waiver priority, if you're in a priority league and you had a top 2 or 3 priority and a guy like that gets dropped, your odds of getting him drop significantly. So be very, very careful with that. And also, you don't want to be the team that's dropping that perennial top 50, top 75 guy. if you have questions, if you're not sure about that, find us on Twitter. Will's Twitter's right there at William is Bill. I'm at NBA DWill. We encourage you to follow Dan Bespris, Aaron Brewski, Ethos Fantasy BK. If you have questions about this because you're new to it, feel free to reach out to us. We'll help you with it. There are plenty of opportunities, or plenty of places that you can go to find that. Google searching it, like Will said. You got to do a little more digging doing that, but you just guys are going to have struggles, and you have to determine, okay, is this guy going to be a top 50 or 75 player, or is he somebody that I took late and he's not going to be that, so I'm okay to drop him. So Will, let me throw it to you right here. When you're looking at your team and you've got a guy that you took late, but you know that he typically finishes pretty well, how long of a leash do you give him?
It really is dependent on your team. You can have a longer leash if you are winning in spite of that low production. But, once you start losing, you get down 0-3 or something like that, then it's like, okay, I need to start, looking at other avenues. But it's really based upon, if your team can keep it afloat until production is better, or if there's a guaranteed guy that I can pick up, then I might have to go ahead and pull the trigger. But yeah, that's another thing we were just talking about. It's a long season, so 2 or 3, even 5 bad games does not make or break you if you know the guy is going to be a top guy. So you can't panic, as hard as it may be, especially if you're on Twitter. There's a lot of overreaction on Twitter. People will say a guy should just be kicked off the team in summer league preseason if they're not playing well, let alone 2 or 3 regular season games. The panic is extreme. So you have to stay patient, unless you just have to get rid of a guy, just like we said, do your research. But a week or 2 is not going to kill you.
Yeah, it's a long season.
For sure.
And you don't have to be in first place in your league. In a head-to-head league specifically, you don't have to be in first place. You just have to make the playoffs. So if you're struggling early on, if you fall behind in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, you don't have to panic. Continue to work that waiver wire. Have faith in the guys that you drafted a little bit. But if you're, you get 5, 6, 7 weeks into the season and you're constantly getting beat in certain areas, then you look at making moves then. And we'll talk about initiating trades and how we go about initiating trades on the next episode. But there's ways around it. I can tell you a number of times where my team was setting middle of the pack early in the season. I'm like, okay, I'm getting drilled in this category every single week. You can look at the other teams and say, okay, this guy's getting 150 assists a week. This guy's getting 130. This guy's getting this many, and see where your team ranks among where week to week, you're going to have some guys that blow up and they'll put up crazy numbers, but you can see a consistent level of where teams are finishing with rebounds, assists, points, all of your categories, and then you can adjust your roster accordingly. And that's something that you pay attention to on the waiver wire. Bill was talking about it whenever he was saying, hey, I'm down in blocks. There's a guy out on the free agent list that's getting blocks, so I'm going to go out and pick him up. So you pay attention. When you're not just picking guys up to pick guys up, you have to pay attention to what their stat set is. Let's say, we're playing 9 categories. That's what we told you from the word go. We're talking about standard league, 12 team, head-to-head 9 cat. And so you have to win 5 out of 9 categories. If you're behind in one category and you're focusing on that, but you go out and you pick up a guy that's going to hurt you in 2 or 3 other categories, then the categories that you have in good shape, you could turn around and lose those. So look at what you have, look at what your matchup is, what stats you're running behind on. And then when you go out to target a guy to pick him up, make sure that, okay, I'm winning free throw percentage, but this guy that's getting these blocks, this guy's getting, a block and a half a game. He's probably not going to be on your free agent list. But if he is, okay, this guy's getting a block and a half a game. this guy's getting 1.2. He's shooting 40% from the free throw line, and this guy's shooting 70%. Okay, I'm going to take the lesser blocks, and I'm going to take the guy with the better free throw percentage. So there's, you target specific categories, but you have to make sure that you're not going to tank your other categories by going out and getting these guys.
For sure, for sure. And another thing, it's hard to just stand pack at times because it's fantasy, it's fun. The waiver wire is fun. That's one of the most fun things you can do is pick up somebody that's going to kill it for you. And you don't want to be left out of that. So I know it's hard. So, FOMO, the fear of missing out. But you'll have plenty of opportunities to add someone from the waiver wire because, especially in these times in the NBA, there's a lot of injuries, of course, as usual, but there's also a lot of players that will just sit out. And you will and should have an IR spot or 3. And, you'll have plenty of opportunities to put guys in IR spot and add someone so you don't miss out on categories there. So there's plenty of things with that. Also, another thing is if your bench is big enough, you're going to have acquisitions per week. Some leagues have 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to be able to manipulate the wire that way and get extra games by adding players there. So you kind of want a guy on the end of your bench that you can interchangeably switch out with the waiver guy to get the edge on players as well.
Yeah, in a head-to-head league, getting an advantage in games played will a lot of times win you the week. And so the way you do that, you be selective when you use those waiver wire pickups. I see a lot of guys, they're just firing, they have a waiver wire pickup and they're picking up 7 guys every single week. And they're picking up a guy on Monday, guy on Tuesday, guy on Wednesday. And you can be successful doing that. But what I would recommend is pay attention, dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, I've got this guy and we're going to call this a streaming spot on your bench. I've got this streaming spot. I've got this guy that's interchangeable. He's a top 120 player. There's another top 120 player on the free agent list. My guy has 2 games this week. This guy has 4 games this week. So make that move. Look at how many games they have in the week. And a lot of times you can get better value by taking a guy, if you're flipping a guy every day of the week, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the way through the week, and you're running guys that are doing like top 150, 175, you would be better off playing a guy that's a top 124 games rather than playing some of the, 150, 175, top 200 guys every single day. So you can go out there and run those numbers up by streaming somebody every day. A lot of times the schedule doesn't allow that because your list, I know there were 2 days so far this week where my roster was entirely full. I had a streamer spot. I could have picked somebody up, but I would have been taking somebody out of my regular rotation. And you don't want to do that. You want to play your guys that are going to be better as much as you can, but be selective whenever you go out there and you find somebody, whether it's a free agent bid, you're spending your budget, or if it's a waiver priority.
Yeah, I think we pretty much nailed it. Just the main thing is, say you have 200 fab for the season. Don't blow over 100 of that fab, anywhere close to 50% of your fab on the first week because like you said,
unless I will say there's an exception to that. If somebody drops a perennial top 50 player, you bid the bank. Like
that's true.
If somebody drops somebody that's a top 50, top 75 player, I will guarantee you that there's not going to be anybody else out there like it throughout the year, or if it is, it's a slim chance. So there are rules, like what Bill is saying is perfect. Like you don't want to overextend on a guy, but there's exceptions to rules. And so if you see a guy that gets dropped and you're like, I don't think he should be out there, and you're not sure where he typically finishes, go and do some research. You've got a little bit of time. Don't take too much time. But if it's a guy that normally finishes in the upper tier of fantasy, it's okay to spend that money. For me, if it's somebody that I want, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to spend the money. I just spent over half of my free agent budget in a dynasty league picking up a rookie point guard that's already seeing minutes, and I have no idea why he got dropped. So, I saw somebody talking crap to me about that, I'm like, listen, he's a rookie. He was taken late and he's already playing. I'm going to take my chances there. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. It's fine. But be selective who you're going out there and get. Be smart with your budget. I'll let Will finish his thought. I just jumped in there over the top of him. He's used to it by now. It's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you nailed it with that. Yeah. With a person that is not a top 100 guy, don't, because like, say for instance, I know we're not talking player specific, but Nick Richards has blown up this season already. I don't know if I would spend all my fab on him, right away, because he's not
a proven guy.
Guy. But if there's a proven guy, I don't want to say Robert Williams, but a lot of people are panicking on, say, a guy that's normally a top 25 guy. He's injured. People are like, I got to get this guy off my team. I'm losing. So there's ways to pick up guys like that as well. Jamal Murray. I mean, there's players that have tweaked injuries that are out. I'm scared. I'm losing. I got to trade my guys. Those guys will be back. So you have to, think about that as well. If they get dropped, go ahead and get them. So a lot of news and notes like that. And most things are case-by-case scenario. So like David said, hit us up on Twitter at any time. We love to answer your questions, give you some advice, point you in the right direction.
100%. Guys, I think we'll end it there. Navigating the waiver wire, we talked about a lot here in this 20 minutes. But just be selective. You know what your team needs are based off of what you're doing in your matchups. So if you need a guy that's going to help you in field goal percentage, go out there and find the guy that has the best field goal percentage that's getting the most opportunity and pick him up. Get him on your roster. Be careful with your free agent budget. Don't overspend it on a guy that could be just a flash in the pan. It's okay to bid on a guy that is getting opportunity. Nick Richards is a guy that Will mentioned. He's getting opportunity. There's not a lot of depth at the center position in Charlotte, so he's producing right now. Go out and spend a little bit of your free agent budget to get him. If you need a guy that's going to get you good field goal percentage, get you some rebounds, he's doing good right now. It's fine to make the move on guys like that. You might catch lightning in a bottle, but you also be selective about who you're dropping off of your team. Make sure that this is not a guy that's just struggling early that's going to end up being a top 50 or 75 guy.
100%. Because every year, the first week you'll see experts saying, please do not drop such and such, because they're going to struggle. A lot of these guys, this first week is their preseason. They're just doing it in the regular season. So, yeah, just be on the lookout for that.
Yep. And the answer, like, if you drafted a guy in the first 7 rounds of your draft and he's struggling early and you're wondering if you should drop him, the answer to that question is absolutely not. You don't. Anybody that you take in the first 7 rounds of your draft, you are not dropping this early in the season. They get drafted in the first 7 rounds more often than not because they should be in that area, and putting them out on the free agent wire is not what you want to do. That's going to help a strong team get stronger. So again, feel free to reach out to us. I'm at NBA DWill21. Bill is William is Bill. We appreciate you guys tuning in as always. If you like the content, you like what we're doing, hit that like and subscribe button. We are pumping out all kinds of fantasy content here at Sports Ethos. There's some more in-depth stuff for guys that are more seasoned, coming from Dan Bespris and Steven Vidovich. So definitely go over and check out those videos. Go to sportsethos.com, get you a fantasy pass, and you will get access to some premium videos that are not available to everybody that can really help you. So we will be back next Sunday. We're going to let you know what we do whenever it comes to putting together a trade, how we approach that, and when is a good time to do that. So we gone. You got anything else? I said we out, but you got anything, Bill?
We out.
We good. All right. We're done.